A racist cop pulled over a black judge, accusing him of stealing the very car he owned. But when his true identity was revealed, what happened next didn't just end her career. It exposed a truth about power, prejudice, and justice that shook an entire city. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because stories like this remind us that respect should never depend on skin color. It was nearly 10 p.m. in Brooklyn Heights when Judge Marcus Hill eased his black Tesla down Maple Avenue, heading home after another grueling day in court. The streets shimmered with rain, every puddle reflecting streetlights like broken mirrors. For Marcus, this nightly drive was his sanctuary. Jazz on low volume, his shoulders finally relaxing after the weight of 1,000 rulings. But that peace shattered the moment he saw flashing red and blue lights ignite behind him. His heartbeat quickened, not from guilt, but from a quiet, familiar dread. He'd done everything right. No speeding, no broken lights. Yet experience had taught him that being a black man in a nice car was often enough to be treated like a suspect. He slowed, pulled over smoothly, and rolled his window halfway down. The rain pattered softly on the hood, whispering the same old story. A female officer approached, tall, rigid, her blonde hair slicked neatly beneath her cap. The badge on her chest gleamed under the streetlight. Officer Dana Reeves. Her eyes flicked across the Tesla, then locked on Marcus with that unmistakable mix of suspicion and superiority. "License and registration," she ordered curtly. No greeting, no explanation, just command. Marcus nodded, keeping his tone calm. "Of course, officer." "May I ask why I've been stopped?" Reeves didn't answer right away. She took the papers, scanned them quickly, then said, "This vehicle matches the description of a stolen black Tesla reported earlier today." Marcus blinked, stunned. Not because it was new, but because it was so painfully predictable. "Ma'am," he said, steady and polite, "this is my car. I purchased it 6 weeks ago. You can run the registration right now. I'm Judge Marcus Hill from the State Judicial Circuit." Her expression didn't change. "Step out of the vehicle, sir." "Officer, there must be—" "Step out of the vehicle," she repeated, her voice louder this time, hand resting on her holster. Marcus took a slow breath, knowing this could spiral fast. He opened the door and stepped into the cool night, his tailored gray suit catching the drizzle. Reeves circled him like a predator gauging its prey. "Hands where I can see them." He complied, not out of fear, but restraint. Years in law had taught him that silence could be more powerful than anger. Still, the humiliation burned beneath his calm. He had spent his life upholding the law, and now that same law was turning on him. "Officer Reeves," he said, his voice measured, "I suggest you check the registration before this goes any further." But Reeves had already raised her radio to her lips. "Dispatch, Unit 47, possible stolen vehicle confirmed. Requesting backup." The words hit him like a blow. Possible stolen vehicle confirmed. Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked at her, and for the first time, she looked away. Not because she doubted herself, but because she knew exactly what she was doing. He stood there on the side of his own street, rain soaking through his coat, the blue lights reflecting off his face. The face of a man who'd spent his career defending the system that was now judging him by nothing more than the color of his skin. And as the distant wail of backup sirens echoed closer, Judge Marcus Hill realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an awakening. "Where are you watching from?" If you believe no one is above the law and no one is beneath respect, tap, like, share, and subscribe, because justice only exists when people like you stand up for it. The siren grew louder, slicing through the misty air as another police cruiser rolled onto Maple Avenue. Its headlights cut across the rain like twin spotlights, pinning Judge Marcus Hill in their glare. He stood on the curb beside his sleek black Tesla, a man of stature and discipline, now framed as a criminal by the very system he had devoted his life to uphold. From the second cruiser, a male officer stepped out, broad-shouldered, dark uniform pressed to perfection, Officer Travis Cole. His expression was unreadable, his stance cautious. He glanced from Reeves to Marcus, then to the car, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "What's the situation?" Cole asked. Reeves didn't hesitate. "Stolen vehicle report matches this Tesla." The suspect claims to be a judge. She practically spat the word claims. Cole's brow furrowed. "A judge? Did you verify?" Reeves shot him a sharp look. "I know what I'm doing." "Just search the car," his composure began to crack. His pulse thudded in his temples, but he stood tall. "Officer Cole," he said evenly, "I suggest you check my credentials before you touch that car. I'm Judge Marcus Hill, Supreme Court of Brooklyn Heights. My ID is in my wallet. You can confirm it right now." Reeves scoffed. "Yeah, that's what they all say." Marcus turned his gaze toward her, his eyes calm but burning with restrained fury. "They all say?" "What exactly do you mean by that, Officer Reeves?" She froze for a fraction of a second, then looked away, pretending not to hear. But the damage was done. Cole shifted uneasily, sensing the weight of her words. "Dana," he said quietly, "maybe we should—" "Search the car," Reeves snapped, cutting him off. Cole hesitated, but duty, or maybe fear, won out. He walked toward the Tesla, his flashlight beam slicing through the drizzle as he opened the door. Marcus clenched his fists. "This is illegal." "You have no probable cause, no warrant." Reeves stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. "You're not in a courtroom now, Judge. On this street, you follow my orders." Her words dripped with contempt. Marcus felt the heat of rage building under his restraint. He could feel every passing second pressing down on him. The irony, the injustice, the humiliation. From the nearby houses, a few porch lights flicked on. Curtains rustled. Neighbors were starting to notice. Cole opened the Tesla's trunk. Inside, everything was meticulously clean. A briefcase, a folded raincoat, a small umbrella. But then, his flashlight paused. In the far corner lay a black duffel bag Marcus had never seen before. "What's this?" Cole asked, stepping back slightly. Reeves smirked, the faint glint of triumph in her eyes. "Looks like we've got something." "That's not mine," Marcus said instantly, his voice rising for the first time. "That bag was not there." Reeves crossed her arms. "Sure it wasn't." Cole unzipped the bag. Inside were small, sealed packets and a store receipt from that same afternoon. The kind of setup Marcus had seen too many times from his courtroom bench. Planted evidence, manufactured suspicion, and ruined lives. For a brief moment, Marcus couldn't speak. The injustice hit like a physical blow. He, a man who'd spent decades defending the law, was now watching it being twisted against him in real time. "This is absurd," he said finally, voice trembling with restrained anger. "You are framing me, Officer Reeves." "Check the body cam footage. Check the registration. Everything you're doing right now is unlawful. Reeves tilted her head slightly, a mocking smile creeping across her face. You seem to know a lot about the law, Judge. Guess we'll find out how it feels to be on the other side of it. Cole looked at her, uneasy. Dana, maybe we should double-check. Cuff him, Reeves snapped. Marcus froze. You can't be serious. But the cold metal cuffs clicked around his wrists before he could protest again. The sound echoed through the wet night like a verdict. From across the street, a woman's voice shouted, "What are you doing?" That's Judge Hill. A curtain swung open, and a phone camera light blinked on. The scene was changing. The private humiliation was becoming public. The neighbors, the lights, the phones, they were all witnesses now. Reeves turned to glare at the onlookers, shouting, "Step back! Everyone stay inside!" But no one moved. Not this time. As rain pooled around his polished shoes, Marcus looked at Reeves, hand still on her gun, her jaw tight with pride, and said quietly, "You just made the biggest mistake of your career." The flashing red and blue lights turned the quiet street of Maple Avenue into a stage of humiliation. Neighbors, drawn by curiosity and disbelief, stepped out onto porches with phones raised. Rain glistened on their screens as the soft patter mixed with murmurs of outrage. Judge Marcus Hill, hands cuffed, stood beside his black Tesla, his reflection fractured in the wet pavement. The man who once commanded silence in a courtroom was now the accused, his dignity trapped behind steel bracelets. Officer Dana Reeves paced in front of him, every step a statement of control. Her uniform, drenched from the drizzle, clung to her like armor, and the sneer on her face told everyone she was still in charge. "Ma'am," a voice called from across the street. It was Mrs. Leona Brooks, an older neighbor, clutching a coat over her nightgown. "That's Judge Hill. He's lived here for years. You can't just arrest him like that." Reeves's head snapped around. "Ma'am, go back inside." "This is a police matter," but Leona didn't move. "No, this is our matter. You're humiliating a man who's served this community longer than you've been an officer." More neighbors appeared, the crowd growing by the minute. Phones lifted higher, cameras zoomed in closer. Every second was being captured, every word, every drop of bias. Marcus lifted his head slowly, his voice low, but powerful. "Officer Reeves," he said, "you're standing here accusing a black man of stealing his own car. I warned you to verify my identity. You didn't. And now this community, the one you're sworn to protect, is watching." Reeves hesitated, her jaw tightening. "You can say whatever you want, Judge. Evidence doesn't lie." "Neither does truth," Marcus countered. "And it has a way of revealing itself, no matter how deep people like you try to bury it." Her nostrils flared. "Watch your tone." "My tone," Marcus said, his voice rising with righteous fire. "You handcuffed an innocent man in front of his home. You called for backup before even checking my registration. My only crime tonight was driving while black." Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Someone shouted, "He's right." Another added, "Run the plates." Reeves turned sharply toward her partner. "Cole, keep the crowd back." But Officer Travis Cole didn't move. His flashlight trembled slightly in his hand. The look on his face had changed, from obedience to doubt. "Dana," he said quietly, I think we should check his ID, just to confirm." Reeves glared at him. "I said, keep the crowd back." Cole didn't respond. He took a step closer to Marcus instead. "Sir, Do you have any identification on you? Marcus nodded toward his pocket. Inside my jacket. Left side. Reeves moved to stop him. Don't touch him, Cole. But it was too late. Cole reached into Marcus's coat pocket and pulled out a black leather wallet. He opened it, and his breath caught. Inside was a golden judicial badge and state-issued ID, stamped and sealed. Honorable Marcus E. Hill, Supreme Court Judge, State of New York. The silence that followed was deafening. Reeves's face drained of color, her mouth opening slightly as if the words she needed had vanished. Cole turned slowly toward her. He's telling the truth, Dana. He's a judge. The crowd erupted. A mix of disbelief, vindication, and anger. Mrs. Brooks shouted, "You see? You see what you've done." Phones recorded every moment, capturing the look of horror on Reeves's face as her authority began to crumble. Marcus lifted his cuffed hands slightly, rain dripping from his fingertips. "You accused a sitting judge of theft," he said, his tone like thunder, deep, commanding, unshakable. "You searched my car without cause, violated my rights, and humiliated me in front of my community." Reeves took a step back, her breathing quickening. I was following procedure." "No," Marcus said coldly. "You were following prejudice." The words hit harder than any gavel. For the first time that night, Officer Reeves looked small, stripped of authority, trapped in the light of her own wrongdoing. And as the sirens in the distance grew louder once more, the sound of a superior officer approaching, she realized this was no longer a traffic stop. It was a reckoning. The air on Maple Avenue hung thick, a storm of tension and humiliation swirling under the glow of flashing lights. Dozens of phones filmed the scene now. Rainwater pooled at Officer Dana Reeves's boots as she stood frozen beside Judge Marcus Hill, who remained calm, cuffed, and unbowed. Then, another police SUV rolled in fast, its headlights slicing through the fog. When the door opened, Captain Raymond Holt stepped out, a tall, broad man with graying hair and an unmistakable air of authority. His uniform was crisp even in the drizzle, his eyes sharp as he took in the scene. "What's going on here?" Holt demanded, his voice deep and commanding. Reeves stiffened, suddenly nervous. "Sir, Captain, I stopped this vehicle because it matched a stolen car report. The suspect refused to cooperate. We found suspicious items in the trunk and—" Holt's eyes narrowed. "And you cuffed a suspect without verifying his ID." Reeves hesitated. "He claimed to be a judge, sir. I couldn't risk." But Holt had already turned to Marcus, his expression shifting the moment recognition hit him. "Judge Hill?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, Captain Holt." "I appreciate your prompt response. I wish it were under better circumstances." Holt's jaw tightened. "Jesus Christ," he muttered under his breath. Then louder, "Get those cuffs off him." Now Reeves blinked. "Sir, I was just following—" "Now, Officer Reeves," Holt barked. Cole immediately stepped forward, fumbling with the keys, unlocking Marcus's wrists. The cuffs fell with a cold, metallic clatter against the wet pavement. Marcus rubbed his wrists, the red marks vivid under the streetlight. Silent proof of humiliation. Holt exhaled, looking utterly ashamed. "Judge Hill, I deeply apologize for this." Marcus cut him off, his voice low but commanding. "Save your apology for the report, Captain. Because this isn't about inconvenience. This is about racial profiling, abuse of power, and humiliation in front of my own home." The words hung heavy, sharp as a gavel strike. The crowd murmured in agreement. A few neighbors shouted, "That's right," and "Hold them accountable." Holt shot a glare toward Reeves. Did you at least run the plates before calling back up? Reeves swallowed hard. I was about to, sir. Holt's voice turned icy. You were about to? You handcuffed a sitting Supreme Court judge without checking his identity? Reeves opened her mouth, but no words came. Her eyes darted from Holt to Marcus, to the cameras filming every second. Marcus stepped forward, his posture regale despite the rain soaking his tailored suit. Captain Holt, he said calmly, this incident won't end on this street. I've spent years fighting for equality under the law, and tonight, I was reminded that the law still looks at me differently. That should terrify all of us. Holt looked genuinely remorseful. You have every right to be angry, sir. Officer Reeves will face a full investigation. I can promise you that Marcus shook his head. No, Captain. What you need isn't another internal investigation that gets buried. What you need is reform, because this isn't one officer's mistake. It's a system that rewards bias and punishes restraint. The captain stood silent. Even Reeves, who had clung so tightly to her pride, couldn't meet Marcus's eyes. The words had stripped away her defenses, leaving only the weight of her guilt. From the crowd, Mrs. Brooks called out again, "Tell her to apologize!" The chant caught on, soft at first, then louder. "Apologize! Apologize!" Reeves's breathing quickened. Her lips parted, trembling. For the first time, her authority meant nothing. Every word, every gesture she made was now under the judgment of a community that had seen the truth. I made a mistake, she said, her voice barely audible. Marcus didn't move. He simply looked at her. Steady, calm, almost sorrowful. No, Officer Reeves. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice, Sue. She blinked, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. I was following protocol. Marcus shook his head slowly. Protocol doesn't tell you to ignore a man's identity. It doesn't tell you to see guilt in his skin color. The street was silent again. The kind of silence that comes only when truth lands too hard to deny. Reeves turned away, ashamed. Cole looked down, visibly shaken. And Captain Holt, a man who had seen years of service, looked older than he had an hour ago. Marcus straightened his shoulders and turned to the crowd. Record this moment, he said firmly. Not for me, but for every innocent person who's ever been treated as less than human. Tonight, we don't just expose a bad cop. We expose a broken system. The crowd erupted in applause. Not loud, but powerful, unified. Holt lowered his head. Judge Hill, I'll make this right. Marcus gave a faint nod. Then make sure it's not just right for me. Make it right for everyone after me. By morning, the video had gone viral. Clipped from a neighbor's phone, the footage of Judge Marcus Hill standing in the rain, handcuffed beside his Tesla, spread across the internet like wildfire. The headline was everywhere. Black judge wrongfully arrested by officer who refused to verify identity. Talk shows debated it. Hashtags trended. Hashtag justice for Hill. Hashtag bias in blue. Hashtag driving while black. And for the first time in years, the city wasn't just angry. It was awake. A few days later, the Brooklyn Heights Civic Center overflowed with people. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing as community leaders, attorneys, and citizens filled the hall. On stage stood Judge Marcus Hill, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, his presence as steady as ever. Behind him, a large screen displayed the opening frame of the viral video. Officer Dana Reeves standing with her hand on her holster, rain pouring down, and Marcus in cuffs. He stepped to the microphone, and silence swept through the room. "When you wear a suit and sit behind a bench," Marcus began, his voice calm but heavy with emotion, "people assume you're protected by the system. But when you wear black skin, chapeau, that protection can vanish in a heartbeat." The crowd hung on every word. "That night," he continued, "I wasn't a judge. I wasn't a public servant. I was just another black man presumed guilty before proven innocent. But this isn't about one bad officer. This is about a culture that lets prejudice feel like protocol." Applause broke out, slow, deliberate, growing louder. Marcus paused, letting it fade. "But I refuse to let anger be the only outcome. I've dedicated my life to justice, and now I'm dedicating it to reform." He announced the launch of a new initiative, Project Equilibrium, a task force bridging law enforcement and minority communities to train officers in cultural awareness, emotional intelligence, and implicit bias prevention. The crowd cheered, but Marcus wasn't finished. He looked toward the front row, where Officer Dana Reeves sat in plain clothes, her eyes red and swollen. When she rose to speak, the entire room fell silent again. "I have no excuse," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw a black man in a nice car, and I assumed the worst. I told myself it was procedure, but the truth is, it was prejudice. And it cost me my integrity, my reputation, and nearly someone else's life." The confession was raw, uncomfortable, but real. "I can't undo what I did," she continued, "but I can face it. Judge Hill, I'm sorry. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to work with your program, not as an officer, but as a student." The room exhaled collectively, some clapping, others nodding in quiet approval. Marcus stepped toward her, his expression unreadable, then extended his hand. "You can't rewrite the past, Officer Reeves," he said softly, "but you can help rewrite the future." Their handshake, one of accountability, not absolution, was captured by every camera in the room. Weeks later, Marcus stood once again on Maple Avenue, the same street where it all began. The autumn wind rustled the leaves. The night was calm this time. No flashing lights, no fear. He gazed at his reflection in the Tesla window and thought about how close the world had come to losing yet another innocent voice to bias. He whispered to himself, "Justice isn't about punishment. It's about awakening." And with that, he got in, started the engine, and drove forward. Not as a victim, but as a catalyst for change. Because sometimes the verdict isn't written in court. It's written on the streets, under rain, under light, under truth. How would you have handled it if you were in Judge Hill's place? Tell us in the comments. And if you believe justice must never depend on skin color, hit like, share, and subscribe for more stories where courage conquers prejudice.